I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Bloodborne out of all the Soulsborne, Kiro, Elden Ring knockoff shitheads. And before you come at me with, "Oh, but player, you've achieved the platinum for most of the games, and you put in a lot of time into it, so that must mean you like it." I'm gonna have to shut down all that bullshit, since people will legitimately shut down any criticism of the game if they don't put in a certain amount of time into it. Fucking are never happy with time in a game, and the same can be said for those who wanna use that speedrunning a game devalues the whole point of the game. So know your role, shut your mouth, here comes the pain. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Bloodborne out of all the Soulsborne, Kiro, Elden Ring knockoff shitheads. Mainly due to the fact that Bloodborne, at least compared to Dark Souls 2, was a bit of a step back. I'll just make it simple. Every boss gives you a lantern, which is exactly what Dark Souls 3 did. They removed the ability to jump with the analog stick, which is something that Dark Souls 2 did. And of course, the lack of just being able to stay in your current game cycle. And just like in Dark Souls 1, after beating either of the final bosses, you're forced into New Game Plus, which is just massive bullshit. But there are some things in Bloodborne that I do like. The first area of the game actually having a lot to explore. The Chalice Dungeons, despite the fact that you need a PlayStation Plus subscription to get the most out of them. And of course, despite the lack of build variety as with Dark Souls 1, the refinements in the aggression gameplay does allow you to mix things up. But I still think that this game is a piece of shit, and that people went against the don't buy a game for one system with Bloodborne just goes to show how much hypocritical people are. But I'm not here to bash on Bloodborne itself, actually, because I'm actually going to defend it in a seemingly dedicated video, and one I thought I'd never have to make because, well, Sony is legitimately pulling a Rockstar / Nintendo / whatever the hell Capcom used to align themselves with, because they are now basically DMCAing anything to do with Bloodborne modifications, and now very recently the Bloodborne PSX demake on websites like Itch.io. I'm just going to get this out there. No, I don't think this is because Sony is going to do their own version of this, and quite honestly, after this stunt, first of all, and the fact that they want to tout their PlayStation account requirements for their other online games, people don't even need or deserve a Bloodborne PC port, let alone from Q-Lock or whoever people decide to take the helm of taking Miyazaki's already ripping off of H.P. Lovecraft, when we already have Quake for that, but I'm not going to get into that. Sony is just not only going to do this a disservice, but you can do the very thing that people have always done when it comes to exclusives. Buy the fucking system and play it yourself. Long plays and watching your favorite Let's Player like Queso can only do so much before you say, you know what, I actually want to experience this for myself. People want to tout that Bloodborne is the greatest game of all time from 2015, and yet lost to other games because it wasn't manly enough like Bloodborne. You're kind of doing yourself a disservice. Snoy, as some people like to call them, as of recently, has not exactly been doing that well. With their only services as of late, it's making something like Astrobot, and it getting Game of the Year despite it being relatively nothing new, and just being more or less a celebration of their various, at least at the time, PlayStation IPs. Which is fine. The problem is that this honeymoon phase crap with Sony has basically ended, and they've already gone back to their shithead manner. Especially when Marvelous! And other companies who used to be a part of Sony and whatnot have basically degraded the likes of Samurai Kagura. But guys, look, it's Mai from Street Fighter 6. Sony is pulling a lot of shit when it comes to Bloodborne, and I have a very good feeling that people are gonna forgive Sony if they decide to do their own version of a Bloodborne remastered. There's a channel that I've seen, which I mentioned here and there, who did a video saying that a Bloodborne PC port would not be good enough. I'm not going to be as nice as a person who actually plays a lot more Bloodborne than I'll ever would, for the sole fact that even the online aspect is just massively flawed, but whatever. Can't criticize the perfect game, you guys. Can't criticize the console-exclusive video game, but don't you dare buy a PlayStation 5 for Spider-Man 2. Oh. It's good the game's on PC, but, you know, I'm not going to really get into logistics about that. It's not even worth it. People should actually just lose any and all hope for them to actually remaster Bloodborne in any capacity, because they're going to ruin it in some shape or form, and people just don't realize it. Even when they decided to port God of War 2018 and Helldivers 2, okay, maybe Helldivers 2 was released simultaneously, a game that's gone from an isometric shooter into a fucking third-person shooter mission-based slop that makes Earth Defense Force look like a fucking grand meal, but I'll digress. And yes, I'm calling Helldivers 2 slop. Fucking cope and safe about that till it's done. At least Earth Defense Force actually plays in split screen, and you can play it offline too, but whatever. Whether they censor the game, as they always have with their other games, whether they be from American branches or the Japanese branch or whatever in between, Sony is always known to censor their products, even when they choose to remaster them, so why do people expect them to treat Bloodborne with the same grace? Because a lot of people like it. Lots of people like Tomb Raider, but that shit got censored. Lots of people like Astrobot, but it's just more or less using the same winning formula. Which, the only reason I'm kind of glad it won Game of the Year is so that people who actually went against Elden Ring DLC being Game of the Year, despite never shutting up about it, just goes to show that even using the tired and winning formula could be just as effective as making the same shitty DLC ever since fucking Dark Souls 1 did with its Authorities of the Abyss DLC. Sony also having that PlayStation account requirement just to play a game that's offline, like God of War 2018 and their other games. But now they're crossing into dangerous territories that would make Nintendo and Take-Two laugh. Bloodborne has barely been used, but they have to protect that copyright. And not to mention that, yes, there is that PS4 emulator, but last I checked, Bloodborne is not abandonware, so if you are playing a illegal copy of Bloodborne, congratulations, you could potentially be on Nintendo's shit list that's equivalent to Sony's now, because you're basically pirating a product that is not abandonware, per se. But nobody wants to talk about that shit. Damn those people for wanting to emulate their games or playing something on Shad PS4. But how dare those motherfuckers pirate and steal from Nintendo? Sony pulling this crap is absolutely fucking disgusting. And I'm sure there's going to be people defending this shit, just like with Mai and Street Fighter 6, despite Capcom, well, just never changing. But remember, guys, Street Fighter 6 does not need saving, because it's already a perfect game as it is. Sure. People should not be hoodwinked, as David Jaffe once told me, and no, I'm not kidding about any of that. Hoodwinked into whatever bullshit that Sony announces, whether it be Happy 10th Anniversary Bloodborne. Guys, look, the Sony account is posting something about Bloodborne. We have to get excited. Break that rule for once and you might be happy about yourself. But don't expect Sony to do you any favors, because they're going to fuck it up. Hell, they might get Bluepoint to remake Demon's Souls, and people got pissed off at that, despite Bluepoint doing a seemingly decent job at bringing back the Demon's Souls experience, albeit within their flavor, but whatever. If they do anything related into announcing Bloodborne, just don't even acknowledge it. Unless they're actually harming you, as in the people who make patches for these games, or using their own assets to demake the game a la Bloodborne PSX, then sure, be pissed off. But don't fall for the bullshit, because you're just going to end up being disappointed, and then when people like me call you out, you're going to be pissed off and say that, oh, you're just ruining my fun, man, let me have my fun. No, fuck you. Just continue to play Bloodborne how you see fit, even if you have to buy a PS5 just to play Bloodborne, because playing a PS4 is kind of a meme at this point. But the PS5 has no games, but sure, let's do the bullshit that the PSC has no games. They're ruining my boy Roger Smith all over again. Not that one. There you go. Sony is going to use Bloodborne as their snake oil, And if you fall for it, you should be mocked. Now, that being said, I'm going to go back to playing the one PSX exclusive that actually matters.